Thank you. I'm going to take you on a little journey. I hope this journey draws a picture of how my life has been interwoven with, I think, some of the changes that are happening today with our communities, with our opportunities. I have a formal presentation here about how some of that weaves in with it, but yesterday I just want to sort of recap how I identify with many of the speakers that were here yesterday. My journey starts at 10 years old, entering residential school. And at 10, I had to grow up real fast. And I had to understand that I'm on my own. And what is it to be on your own? And how am I going to survive this? I'll draw you a picture. It's about 8 o'clock at night. It's dark. It's raining. Thunderclouds. I'm walking up to this pathway of this building, this huge red brick building. My sisters and brothers are with me. We're taken into this room. We're told to stand there and just wait. And then we walk down this long hallway. And at the very end of the hallway is an exit sign. One of those old red exit signs. I walk into this room and it's bed after bed after bed and rows of kids. And my bed happens to be by the window. And I stand inside in front of that window and I never moved the entire night. I watched the rain coming through the bars of the windows as I stood there wondering what would become of my life. And here I stand before you many years later, having had the opportunity to work with my communities right across the country, reaching levels on the national stage, working with national chiefs, Bill Fontaine, Ovid Mercury, Matthew Kuncum, Sean Atwell. So we can do it. We can achieve great things no matter what types of trauma and issues we have faced in our lives. I've been fortunate by the Creator to give me some gifts. And my kukum has always said to use those gifts to whatever way you can for the good. My gifts of communication, my gifts of the mind, my gift to be able to see beyond what is today. I hope I can share some of that with you today. I hope I can impart some of that knowledge like our speakers did yesterday and give you a new perspective, a different perspective than what we currently have. I myself am a believer that food has been medicine. My kukum taught me that. I was 40 years old, and I had thought I had fatigue syndrome. I'm sure some of you have heard that term. Fatigue syndrome. I went, wow. So I went to my kukum, and she says, you stay with me 2 weeks. Just come and live with me for 2 weeks, and I'll get you healthy. And she fed me food from her garden for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of food from her garden. And I was like 10 years younger. Energy, full of life, ready to hit the world again. And I thank my kukum from that point on. I realized the value of food and the value of being part of Mother Earth. I always was raised on a garden and I never realized just how important it was to us. And these are some of the thoughts that were shared yesterday about food is medicine, and that food is the only thing that will keep us healthy. I was sharing with somebody this morning that it's funny that it was mentioned yesterday. Vitamin B, vitamin C. And every morning in my bathroom, I have a little vial of vitamin B complex and a little vial of vitamin C pills, and I always eat my vitamin C with an orange in the morning, because I was taught that the enzymes in the orange itself will help absorb the vitamin C into your system. So I'm living what was talked about yesterday. I'm living the healthiness of that. And I hope it's reflected in what I do in my life and how I can interact with other people, the way I feel. And what scared me most is that I love hockey. And I thought I was never going to play hockey again because I started getting pain in my joints. Pain all through my joints. And I was wondering, well, God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to play hockey and I can't even move anymore because I'm getting pain in my joints. I thought I was getting arthritis. And I read this book called The Wheat Belly. And it changed my life forever. The gluten, the wheat that we create today, the genetically modified wheat that we create today is not edible by humans. We are poisoning ourselves by eating this stuff. And I was being poisoned, and I could no longer move. My father has a farm. We used to build things on this farm, and he was asking me one day, he says, I need you to build that shed. It's 20 by 30 shed. We need to put some stuff in that new shed. And I couldn't even pick up a hammer. My joints were so sore. After reading The Wheat Belly in 3 days after I stopped eating wheat of any kind, all the whites, didn't matter what it was, in 3 days my joint pain went away. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it. There were 10 other ailments that also went away. Bloating of the stomach, digestive issues, flatulence, farting. Another big one. Fogginess in the eyes, fogginess in the brain, skin. All of these things started disappearing and changing. And it changed my life, and I hope that standing here before you, that you that are listening can understand that our food really is our medicine, and that we really do need to eat well for ourselves. So my journey has always been about what I can do on my part to help our people, and what gifts I can use to try to do what I can for our community. So I've been gifted with the ability to travel this country and see maybe over 200 reserves, probably attend 500 or more conferences on housing issues, on social issues, on justice issues, on education, on economic development, all of the different things that affect our communities, infrastructure, you name it. And so I developed a magazine called Aboriginal Times. I don't know if any of you remember it. I used to publish it. It was in the Golden Mail for quite a few years. We hit the largest number of publications in the country, 225,000 copies a month. My aim was to try to educate the non-native community about the issues that we face in our communities, because we already know what our problems are. What we wanted to find out is what do we have for solutions? What can we do to bring these solutions to us? So all of these, as I'm weaving through and learning and beginning to understand all of these different aspects of our communities and our lives, and what we can do to take and create an economic independence for ourselves. And those are the words that I really think are important, is sustainable economic independence is where we need to be. It's where we need to head. It's how we as sovereign people, as sovereign communities, can exercise our right once and for all. So as I weave my life through and my journey, many of you in this room actually have encountered me at one point in time in your own journeys over the years. And I started believing that economic development was the answer, but actually it was education. Education first, before economic development. We educate ourselves. If we become aware of what we can do for ourselves, then we can do anything. And then the economic development will follow. So my journey really is about change. My life has changed. And today's marketplace is changing so fast. Technology changes so fast. Industry changes so fast. The world is upon us. Immigration is starting to impact our lives. I live in Vancouver now. I'm from Alberta. My mother's from the Paul Nation. My father's from Alexis. Lived on the Métis settlement, East Prairie. But I live in Vancouver now. That's where my land is. That's where I call home. And I see the influx of immigration that's coming to our country in ways I've never seen before. I thought I was in a different country moving to Vancouver. The Asian population is enormous. The East Asian population is enormous. They are slowly bringing themselves to this wonderful country we call Canada and immersing themselves here, but they're not learning and they're not integrating about us, our First Nations people and the original peoples of this land. And so we have I have a vision through all of this that John and I formed a company called Indigenous Technology Partners. And the reason we have partners in our title is because we believe, and I believe, that if we are going to be able to move the yardstick from where we are today with our social and economic conditions of our communities, that we need to partner with the right people who have the same values that we have in our culture. And that is one of the most important things that when we partner with anyone from the non-native community, is that the first question we ask them is, do you have the same values? Our MOUs and our LOIs actually have in our documents that first and foremost, there must be capacity and training in what we do. There must be an ability to have the values and culturally appropriate environments in place. If we aren't aligned in that way, we don't do business with them. Because the value of our cultures, the language, the preservation of our language are paramount if we are to retain and move forward in this world, the 21st century. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a business journey now, because today, where I've evolved into is this partnership. John and I met in Vancouver, and he was running a company called Indigenous Solutions, one of the largest indigenous companies in technology in the entire country. Unfortunately, John had a board of directors that had other ideas about what they wanted to do with that company, and it ceases to exist. However, John's experience and his knowledge and his values and his years of experience in the technology world were aligned with mine, and he felt he was a good partner to bring along. So that's why we're partnered here today, and I want to share that with you. So John and I founded the company in 2017. And the mission statement is to advance Indigenous communities through technology, because our youth are the ones who use technology the most, understand the impact it has on our communities, and we don't want to leave them behind again. We don't want to be left from the industrial age into the technology age, the information age. We want to ensure that our kids are brought along and they have the opportunity to be trained in the world of ICT. ICT is the focus of what we do. Wage parity, not being paid enough, not being paid with the rest of Canada. I'm not going to read this. You guys, I hope you can see it. I hope it's readable. I'm just going to talk about that we don't have the same employment standards. We don't have the same opportunities as the rest of the country. And we're hoping to be able to bring some of this to our communities through what we call pods, education pods, employment pods, where we bring our partners and we employ you on your reserve so you do not have to leave your community, so that you can stay in your community and stay gainfully employed. Rather than having to go to the city to get a job, stay in your community. That's really the impetus behind a lot of this. Here are some stats. I'm sure we've all read the stats about how how much unemployment there is on our nations, how dismal it is in many situations. But I think that it's time to flip the paradigm. And that's what this slide is about, flipping the paradigm. How many of you have seen the triangle with Maslow's theory of hierarchy, right? It's a triangle that's from the top down. Well, this is a triangle from the bottom up, because the bottom is the tipping point. It's the point that we use that meets the road from the youth finding jobs. And I'll explain a little bit about it. The individual is the most important. The person, the youth, the people, they're number one. And how do we get them jobs? How do we keep them in their communities? The second is ITP, the second level, the partnerships, gaining the partnerships and allowing people, both native and non-native, to work together to find ways to employ our people. There are over 200,000 jobs being outsourced in the technology sector right now, right across the country. India became the #1 place in the world to do technology business. And you know why? Because they had the foresight and said 40 years ago, we're going to educate our people in the technology sector. We're going to give them free education. We're going to give them education that's going to allow this country to move forward, and they are the #1 country in the world now, hiring the most number of technology people. We want to bring those jobs back to Canada. We want to bring those 200,000 jobs here because that's how many people we like to see employed in our communities here, and many of those jobs can be brought back here. The distributed supply chain ecosystem. This is the evolution of change that I see happening in the world today. Collaboration is the terms that we often hear. We need to collaborate. We need to work together. But the fact is, when we work together, we create an ecosystem supply chain that allows for us to do different things together. Yesterday there was some talk about a little bit about what an ecosystem could be. The food and medicine is part of that ecosystem, in building it, in creating the environment to allow us to create economic independence for ourselves. The supply chain also touches on the ability for us to meet the demand in the rest of the world. So there's the supply, but there's also the demand, and that's where the partnerships come in. We have both the supply and the demand side, and you can't have one without the other. People want CBD, they want cannabis, they want the medicine. That's the demand side. So how are we giving them the supply? Well, we've got vendors in the back here right now who are working their hearts out in trying to supply that demand for good medicine. That's a microcosm of an ecosystem. The next part of the paradigm that I'd like to flip is the foreign investment, corporate partnerships, and industry development. This is big picture thinking. Big picture thinking to a point that we, in our communities, need to stop looking at other people coming in and helping us build and them benefiting from the assets of land and buildings and what other opportunities that we can bring to the table. We need to be at the core, and we need to build those for ourselves so that the partners that we're bringing into the community are helping us build our economies, our communities, from the inside out, and not the other way around. We have economic leakage. There are a whole bunch of buzzwords that I could say around the table. Economic leakage that has been happening for God knows how long. And we need to reverse that trend. And that's what this slide is about. And finally, what's the big problem Canada has? We're going to have 48 million people by the year 2050, was it? How many new immigrants are coming to this country that will be settling in this land? And what we should do to build our economies is we should invite those world leaders who want to work with First Nations to bring them here to work in our economies and build our economy and communities as a whole. So what I'm talking about here is we need to change the narrative. We need to change the narrative of what's been happening in this country for the first 150 years we call Canada. And we need to change the narrative to make this a First Nations Indigenous economy, building the GDP of our own communities in a way that allow our generations of people to move forward. The genesis of this slide is to flip the paradigm. This is just an example of an ecosystem. Talking about philanthropy, crowdsourcing, Canadian superclusters, the Indigenous Wealth Creation Foundation. You can't be sovereign unless you have money or financing. We need to create our own financing. We need to be able to build our own financial institutions in a way that we can access them and use them. The supply chain requires us to be able to do that so that we can build our economies the way we want to, creating economic independence. All the while, we know that we are integrated and that we know that Canada itself has a role to play in helping us build our own economies. The digital ecosystem, as I've mentioned, is about bringing those jobs back, bringing the partners in that will allow us to keep our kids in their communities learning and becoming some of the leading minds in the world in the digital sector of the economy. Being able to stay in their communities, building their communities, because we cannot. How many here work in an office? How many in an office don't have a computer? Don't use any technology whatsoever? How many of you have a phone in your pocket? Technology has touched our lives in every way possible. We cannot escape it. There is no way. So we need to harness the power and the information of what the digital economy is going to do for us, and how we can benefit from it, and how we can integrate it into our lives for good. This whole technology thing led John and I to invest our efforts in G2S, genetics to sale for the cannabis and hemp industry. And why is that an important part? If we want to be in charge of an economy of cannabis and hemp, it starts with the genetics, it starts with the seed, it starts with understanding the strain, the food, the medicine, and the ability of what it does and how it can heal our people. And if we have the genetics to sale software that allows everyone in the ecosystem, whether you're a packager, a grower, a dispensary, you name it. NIMCA, the National Indigenous Medical Cannabis Association, has a booth in the back here. We have partnered with them in creating this genetics to sale because certification of cannabis and hemp, knowing where that seed came from, we can export cannabis cannabis and hemp, not only to our communities, but if we do this correctly, creating the genetic and traceability of what that means, we can export anywhere in the world. We can export our indigenous certified products and services anywhere in the world, creating our economies. The mission statement is basically to ensure that we maintain sovereignty, that we maintain and control and manage the destiny of our indigenous strains of cannabis and hemp. Anyone who's going to grow it, anyone who can get involved in this community. This is just an example of the genetic sale. It's 100% Canadian, it's 100% Indigenous, and it's 100% for the Indigenous communities who are getting involved in cannabis and hemp. This slide is the genesis of creating this ecosystem that we call the Indigenous Medical Cannabis Ecosystem Value Chain. And everybody in this room right now is contemplating, am I going to be a producer? Do I want to be an extractor? Maybe I can get into packaging. Maybe I've got a trucking company. Maybe I want to do research. Maybe there's different things I want to do. But each and every one of these people can get involved. The abundance and the size of this market is nothing like we've ever witnessed in the past. And this is what I am passionate about. For the first time in my life, in the first time, I think, in Canada, we have an industry that we can finally become stewards of the land again. That we can in turn take the values that we have in our communities and apply them to an industry that means something to us, all the while we can generate and prosper from it and teach the rest of the world. So through all of this, I've been working and speaking at different conferences on the idea of where cannabis and hemp sit. I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to talk about the industry. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are at with cannabis and hemp. Many of us in this room are considering what we're going to try to do in the cannabis and hemp industry. And we have to think about the market itself from an external perspective. Who are the big players, and how is some of the rest of the industry going to, how is it going to impact us? How is it going to impact us? How many of you have heard of Aurora, Canopy, Tilray, these kinds of companies? These companies started 5 years ago working towards building the cannabis industry in Canada. Through that process, they've already capitalized in the billions of dollars and are already exporting product from around the world. Health Canada, regulations, federal government has decided that medical cannabis and recreational cannabis are two different things. But in fact, they are the same. What we're hoping to achieve here is that I've been asked to create a consortium of Indigenous-led and owned ecosystem value chain, an environment that will allow all of the communities at the regional level to work on the national stage, protecting us from the big corporations who are going to pick us off one at a time. If we go in singularly, just like my grandma used to say as a stick, if we go in as a bundle, if we go in together, if we work together in a consortium, we will in turn be able to actually manage the industry in Canada and become the largest exporters in the world, because the land mass that we have access to here in Canada is 54% of the land mass. And if we can begin to grow cannabis and hemp in a way that allows us to do this through through organizations like NIMCA, where we have certification, where we have standards, where we can in turn work together in generating this new economy that's now come to our attention in a way that's never allowed us to be able to build our own economy. Green, smart technology, sustainable and generational, stewards of the land, food and medicine, culture and language. Hemp has over 25,000 possibilities that have been identified to create products and services. Cannabis is a 10, 20, 30, $100 billion industry. Hemp is a $1 trillion industry. It is the way, try to imagine for a moment, one community is growing hemp, another community is taking that hemp and actually making concrete from it. Another community is taking that hemp and creating the CBDs from it. Another is taking textiles and making textiles from it. We can create an entire ecosystem economy in this country because hemp has the ability to touch every fabric of our life as we know it today. We don't need to look beyond it. I will be speaking at a national conference in Ottawa on February the 17th to the 21st, working in conjunction with a number of other national players to try to ensure that sovereignty is a key message to our federal government about us being able to build our own economies and making sure that the laws, because they've given us 18 months to figure out what we're going to do in the cannabis and hemp industry here for ourselves before legislation hits the ground. And why the consortium is important, it becomes a big part of how we can change or ensure that the laws work for us to ensure that we maintain our own sovereign laws so that each community themselves can participate in this in a way that we've never been able to do it before. I see this country for the first time being able to change, and our communities being able to change the conditions of our communities within one generation if we work together and rally around hemp and cannabis. For a working title, I'm sure some of you have heard the word supercluster, the 5 superclusters that are currently being funded by the government. Well, this is an Indigenous National Consortium supercluster of hemp and cannabis. And we will be presenting this to Ottawa in the coming months. And we hope that you will join us, and we hope that you will participate in moving this vision forward. John and I can be reached. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.